I should have known it'd be a bad idea the moment he pulled out the second bottle of rum. "We're not going to finish that," I said, eyeing the dark glass as he tucked it into the cooler. He shrugged. "You say that now." I rolled my eyes and shoved another dry bag into the hull. The sun was just cresting over the marina, casting everything in a kind of golden glow that made even the cracked wood docks look romantic. We'd both taken the week off work, told people we were doing a guy's trip to decompress, me from too much office noise, him from too much family drama. What I didn't tell anyone was that I hadn't stopped thinking about Caleb in months. Not like that, I'd told myself. Not really. We'd been friends since college, roomed together for a while, fell into this easy rhythm of beers on the weekend, hiking on random Saturdays, calling each other when life hit weird. It wasn't supposed to feel like more. But then he broke up with his girlfriend, and something shifted, or maybe I just started seeing the shift that was already there. Either way, now we were here, a 38-foot sailboat, just the two of us, no real destination beyond south. The boat was borrowed. One of Caleb's old coworkers had offered it up in exchange for feeding her cat for 2 weeks, and somehow that translated into a full-blown sailing trip. I didn't question it too hard. Caleb had that kind of luck, always landing in soft places, even when he jumped without looking. We set off just after noon, the wind mild but steady, the ocean calm like it was welcoming us in. For the first few hours, everything felt normal. We joked about how unqualified we were, took turns at the helm, argued about who was more likely to get seasick. Caleb kept slipping into this version of himself I hadn't seen in a while, loose-shouldered, sun in his hair, that cocky half-smile he always wore when he thought he was being charming. And he was. That was the problem. By sunset, we'd anchored near a cove that looked untouched. No other boats, no buildings, just cliffs and trees and the endless sound of water. "Not bad for a first day, huh?" Caleb said, stretching out on the deck. I sat beside him, nursing the first of what would become several drinks. We didn't crash or get eaten by sharks, so yeah, high bar cleared. He laughed, head tilted back, eyes closed. I found myself staring longer than I should have. It was too easy to look at him out here. No distractions, no city noise. Just him, and the way the light caught the curve of his jaw, the dip of his collarbone beneath his shirt. "You ever think about just disappearing?" he asked suddenly. I blinked. "What, like going off grid?" "Yeah, no phone, no bills, just this. Ocean. Quiet, no bullshit." I hesitated. "You wouldn't last a week." He opened one eye and looked at me. "Wow, harsh. You'd miss coffee shops and dirty street tacos too much." He grinned. "Fair." A long pause settled between us. Not awkward. Exactly. Just thick. Like the air got heavier with everything we weren't saying. He turned toward me slightly, his elbow resting against the deck rail. "I'm glad you came, by the way." "Yeah?" "Yeah. I don't think I could have done this with anyone else." My throat went dry. I tried to answer, but all I could manage was a nod. That night, we slept in the cramped cabin below deck. The temperature dropped fast once the sun disappeared, and even with both of us curled up in our bunks, it was cold. I woke up at some point after midnight, not to a sound, but to a presence. Caleb had moved. His bed was barely an arm's length from mine, but now he was closer, sitting on the edge of my bunk, looking down at me. I froze. "You okay?" I whispered. He didn't answer right away, just stared for a moment, his face unreadable in the moonlight, filtering through the hatch. "Couldn't sleep," he murmured. I shifted, unsure what to do with the sudden intensity in his voice. "Want me to switch bunks?" He shook his head. "No. Just stay up with me?" So I did, and we lay there, side by side, not touching but not really separate either. Eventually, he whispered, "Ever feel like there's something you're not saying?" My heart kicked up. "All the time." He turned his head. Our faces were close, too close. "I think I've been hiding something," he said, barely audible. "What?" I asked. But he didn't answer. Instead, he just stared at me, waiting, like I already knew. Morning came slowly. The sun spilled gold across the deck, and the faint scent of salt water mixed with the rum from last night. Caleb was already up, leaning over the railing, staring at the horizon. I tried not to notice the way the sunlight kissed his shoulders, the way his hair fell over his eyes in soft waves. "Morning," I said, voice hoarse from lack of sleep. He didn't turn immediately, just gave a small, lazy smile. "Morning! Sleep well?" "Yeah, sorta," I muttered, trying to sound casual. He glanced at me, expression unreadable, like he knew exactly what I was thinking. Which, of course, he probably did. Caleb always had this unnerving way of seeing through everything. The jokes, the distractions, the walls I thought I'd built around myself. We made coffee in the tiny galley, fumbling with the small stove and spilling half the grounds on the counter. He laughed when I cursed under my breath, the sound warm and easy, and for a moment, it felt like the world outside the boat didn't exist. "Ready to sail?" he asked, handing me a cup. I nodded. The wind had picked up a little, filling the sails as we left the cove. The boat rocked gently, the ocean whispering beneath us. I took the helm for a while, watching Caleb move about the deck, adjusting ropes, checking the rigging. His movements were confident, smooth, mesmerizing. "Hey," he said suddenly, coming up behind me. "You're doing fine." I glanced up. His hand brushed mine as he adjusted the wheel alongside me. Electric. My chest tightened. I tried not to think about it. Tried not to feel the tension coiling between us like the ropes on the deck. "Thanks," I muttered, forcing my eyes back to the horizon. We fell into a rhythm, shifts at the helm, cooking meals together, laughing at terrible playlists, and stealing glances we both pretended weren't loaded with meaning. By mid-afternoon, we anchored in a tiny bay, secluded and almost impossibly quiet. I went to rinse off in the small onboard shower, and when I emerged, Caleb was already lying on the deck, shirtless, the sun highlighting the curve of his muscles. I froze, not sure whether to look away or let my eyes linger. He caught me staring, and instead of embarrassment, a slow grin spread across his face. "You're not supposed to be that obvious," he teased, his voice low, teasing but not unkind. "Sorry," I said, heart thudding. I didn't mean to." He sat up, leaning on one arm, and that grin didn't leave his face. "Relax. I like it when you're honest." And just like that, the dam broke a little. Something unspoken hung in the air, thick as the salt mist around us. I wanted to ask him outright, to name it, to dive in and see if we could bridge the invisible gap between us, but something in his eyes stopped me. Hesitation. Fear. Or maybe it was the same thing I felt. That night, anchored under a sky thick with stars, we shared a bottle of rum and sat side by side on the deck, legs brushing. Every casual laugh, every accidental touch felt like it carried more weight than it should. Finally, he spoke, voice soft. "I've been wanting to tell you something for a long time." My stomach twisted. I nodded, urging him on without words. I don't know if I can hide it anymore," he said, taking a deep breath. The words caught in his throat, and the silence stretched between us. My heart hammered, ears buzzing. "I think I've been feeling more than I should," he finally whispered. I swallowed hard. "Me too." His hand found mine in the dark. Tentative at first, then firm. The boat rocked gently beneath us, the ocean humming around, and in that impossible quiet, all the things we'd kept hidden were suddenly impossible to ignore. Neither of us spoke for a long time. We didn't need to. The sea had stripped everything down to just us, and the truth we'd been running from. The next morning, everything felt different. Even the way the sunlight hit the deck seemed charged, like the air itself had changed. We moved around each other with a cautious intimacy. Still friends, but now the unspoken acknowledgement of what had passed lingered like a current beneath the surface. I was making breakfast, frying eggs in the galley, when Caleb leaned against the doorway. Shirtless, hair still damp from his morning rinse, eyes glinting in the early light. "You make that look easy," he said, half teasing, half serious. I laughed nervously. "It's just eggs." He stepped closer, the space between us shrinking. "No, seriously. Everything about you. It's effortless." My chest tightened. I wanted to tell him to stop, wanted to brush it off. But the truth was, I was soaking it in, feeling it. It was intoxicating. The way he looked at me, the weight of those words in a room too small for the tension they carried. Breakfast ended with us sitting on the deck, legs dangling over the side, watching the water shimmer. Every time our knees touched, every accidental brush of a hand felt magnified, charged. We laughed at a stupid video on my phone, but I couldn't focus on it. The way he leaned toward me when he laughed made my stomach flip. By mid-afternoon, the wind picked up. The sails snapped as Caleb guided the boat expertly, the turquoise waves dancing beneath us. I took the wheel while he adjusted the lines, and we fell into silence, the kind of quiet that wasn't empty, but heavy with everything unsaid. "You've been quiet," he said finally, voice low, almost hesitant. I shrugged, pretending. "Just thinking about the route." He smirked knowingly. "Uh-huh. Sure." I caught him staring at me, and for a moment, everything stilled. My heart jumped. He leaned closer under the pretense of checking the sails, fingers brushing mine in a way that felt deliberate. I didn't pull away. The sun dipped toward the horizon, spilling orange and pink across the waves. We anchored in a secluded inlet, the water calm, the only sounds the soft slap of waves against the hull and our breathing. "I'm gonna grab a beer," Caleb said, heading to the cooler. I watched him, aware of every movement, the curve of his back, the way his muscles flexed as he lifted the bottle. He turned, catching me staring, and grinned. That grin, the one that used to make me stupidly tongue-tied in college, hit me square in the chest. "You're not making this easy," he murmured, leaning against the rail beside me. "I'm not trying to," I said honestly. He looked at me, eyes darkening, closer than comfortable, closer than safe. "Good, because I've been thinking about this, about you, for a long time." My pulse spiked. "Thinking about what?" He didn't answer with words. His hand brushed mine again, lingering. Closer. Electric. I couldn't stop the shiver that ran down my spine. The evening stretched on with the sun melting into the horizon, painting the sky in impossibly deep colors. We sat shoulder to shoulder, shoulders touching now without excuse, and the boat rocked gently beneath us. Then, almost without realizing it, our knees pressed together. His hand moved just slightly over mine. I froze, heart hammering, aware that the moment we'd both been avoiding had arrived on a wave of wind and water. "I can't pretend anymore," he whispered. "Me neither," I said, barely a breath. For a few heartbeats, the world outside ceased to exist. No horizon, no sun, no gentle slap of water against the hull. Just us, just the heat, the tension, the undeniable pull. And then, slowly, deliberately, he leaned toward me. The moment he leaned in, everything else disappeared. The wind whipping around the boat, the fading sunlight, even the gentle rocking of the waves, all of it faded into the background. All I could see was him, and all I could feel was the pull between us, magnetic and undeniable. Our foreheads touched first, tentative, almost testing the water. His hand rested lightly on my knee, brushing against me in a way that made my breath hitch. I wanted to pull back, to hesitate, but I couldn't. Not when every instinct in my body was telling me to lean in closer. His eyes fluttered closed, mine followed instinctively. And then his lips were on mine, soft at first, questioning, as if seeking permission. I gave it without a word, pressing closer, letting the moment consume me. It was nothing like the fantasies I'd built in my head over the years. Messy, fumbling, awkwardly perfect. His hands traced my arms, over my shoulders, and I could feel every heartbeat, every tremble, every little shiver that raced through my body. We pulled back slightly, just enough to catch our breaths. The boat rocked gently beneath us, the ocean whispering beneath the hull. Caleb's forehead rested against mine, breath mingling. "I shouldn't have waited this long," he murmured, voice low, husky. "Me neither," I admitted, heart pounding so hard I was sure he could feel it. The sun dipped below the horizon, and the sky shifted to a deep indigo. The first stars appeared, tiny pinpricks of light, and we sat there, tangled, aware of each other in a way we never had before. "You know," Caleb said, almost cautiously, "this changes everything." I swallowed, knowing he was right. "Yeah, it does." He smiled faintly, a mixture of mischief and something else I couldn't name. "Good thing we're on a boat with nowhere to run, huh?" I laughed softly, the tension breaking just a little, though my chest still felt tight. No hiding now, and we didn't. That night the cabin below deck became our sanctuary. Every brush of skin, every whispered word, every stolen touch carried weight. The boundaries we'd spent years maintaining dissolved in the small enclosed space. Sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt him there, hand brushing mine, shoulder against mine, the warmth radiating in a way that made the small cabin feel too small, and yet perfect. The ocean outside was endless, vast, and isolating. And yet, for the first time in years, I didn't feel small or lost. I felt seen. Caleb stirred beside me, and I felt him shift closer. "Stay with me," he murmured in the dark. "I am," I whispered, letting the words anchor me, letting the weight of the week, of everything, fall away. Because out here, on this small sailboat surrounded by nothing but water, we couldn't hide from the truth anymore. And for the first time, neither of us wanted to. The next morning, the sun poured across the deck like molten gold. I woke to find Caleb already at the helm, the boat cutting through the gentle waves, his profile sharp in the early light. He looked so calm, so sure of himself, and yet there was a tension in the way he shifted, as if last night's confession had left him half exposed. I stretched, trying not to stare too obviously, but of course I did. Every line of his body was etched into my memory from the night before, every brush of skin, every whispered word. The intimacy hung between us like a second skin. "You awake?" he asked without turning. "Yeah," I said, climbing up to stand beside him. The sun hit his hair, golden at the tips. "Good morning." He smiled faintly. "Good morning." We sailed in near silence for a while, each of us lost in our thoughts. The gentle rocking of the boat, the only rhythm between us. It was peaceful, but peaceful in a way that felt almost dangerous, too quiet, too intimate. Out here, there were no distractions, no escape. Every glance, every movement, every fleeting touch carried weight. By mid-afternoon, we anchored in a small cove tucked away from the main coastline. The water was impossibly clear, and the sky a deep, endless blue. We stripped down to swim, laughing and splashing like we were kids again, but the playfulness carried an undertone we both knew. When I surfaced from a dive, Caleb was close, fingertips grazing my shoulder as he treaded water. My chest went tight. "Careful," I said, though my voice betrayed nothing. "You're tense," he said softly, eyes locking with mine. "You're not pretending well." I tried to brush it off, laughing. "Maybe I just hate salt water in my eyes." "Uh-huh," he said, smirk tugging at his lips. He swam closer, his hand brushing mine deliberately. Electric. I didn't pull away. Later, back on deck, we lay on our towels, shoulders touching, the sun baking our skin. Every accidental brush, every shared laugh, every subtle glance carried the weight of last night and the unspoken desires that had erupted between us. "I keep thinking about last night," he said, voice low, almost hesitant. I swallowed. "Me too." He turned slightly, facing me, the space between us charged. "Do you think this changes anything?" I paused. "It changes everything," I admitted. He nodded slowly, as if bracing himself for a truth he couldn't run from. "Good. Because I don't want to hide it anymore. Not with you. Not ever." I felt my heart clench. Neither do I. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of sun, sea, and quiet touches. By evening, as the sky bled pink and orange, Caleb poured 2 glasses of wine. We sat on the deck, shoulders brushing again, the gentle sway of the boat making even sitting close feel intimate. "You ever think about what happens after this trip?" I asked cautiously. He took a slow sip, eyes on the horizon. "Yeah, and I think we deal with it together. Whatever it is." That simple statement, no hesitation, no fear, just certainty, sent a thrill through me. The open sea had stripped away our masks, forced us into a closeness we'd both denied for years, and now there was no turning back. The stars emerged again that night, brighter than anywhere on land, and we sat shoulder to shoulder, sipping wine in silence. Every now and then, our fingers brushed, no longer accidental, and the tension between us throbbed like the pulse of the waves beneath the hull. We didn't sleep well that night. Every touch, every breath, every small movement became magnified in the darkness of the cabin. We were both aware of the line we had crossed, aware that the days ahead would be complicated, charged, impossible to ignore. And yet, out here, surrounded by nothing but ocean and sky, it didn't feel dangerous. It felt inevitable. The next morning, the sun rose slowly over the horizon, painting the water in streaks of gold and pink. The gentle sway of the boat became a heartbeat under our feet, and I realized just how much of myself I had left behind on the shore: anxiety, caution, even pride. Out here, it was just Caleb, me, and the unspoken tension that refused to stay buried. He was already on deck when I emerged from below, squinting at the sun, his hair sticking in damp spikes from a quick rinse. I couldn't help but notice how the light played across his shoulders, the curve of his back, the way his bare skin seemed to shimmer in the morning glow. I wanted to look away, to focus on something safe. Anything. But my eyes betrayed me. "Morning," he said casually, though his voice carried a softness that made my chest tighten. "Morning," I replied, trying to sound neutral, but failing spectacularly. We spent the morning steering, adjusting sails, and moving about the boat in silence, but the quiet was alive. Every glance, every brush of our hands, every accidental touch of knees felt amplified, charged, impossible to ignore. The sea was vast and empty, yet somehow, the smallest space between us felt electric. By mid-morning, a breeze picked up, stronger than the day before. We tacked back and forth, the wind snapping the sails and tossing our hair in wild directions. Caleb took the helm, and I moved to check the lines. Our shoulders brushed and the contact lingered, deliberate, teasing. I swallowed hard, aware of the fire sparking through me, and felt him shift closer without a word. "You're too tense," he said, voice low, brushing a hand along my arm as he passed. "I'm not?" I lied, though my heart betrayed me, thumping in loud, uneven beats. "You are," he countered, flashing a grin that was part mischief, part something deeper I couldn't name. "You've been holding back since the moment we left the dock." I looked at him, and for a second, the world stopped. The wind, the waves, even the sun felt suspended as his eyes held mine. "Maybe I was waiting," I admitted. He tilted his head, curious, teasing, yet gentle. "Waiting for what?" "For you," I said quietly, words trembling on the edge of confession. His grin softened into something almost tender. "I was hoping you'd say that." The rest of the afternoon passed in a haze of sun, salt water, and stolen moments. We swam in a secluded cove, our bodies brushing, every touch magnified by proximity and heat. Later, back on deck, We sat shoulder to shoulder, legs dangling over the side, watching the sun melt into the horizon. Each brush of our hands, each accidental nudge, carried the weight of all we'd been avoiding for years. By nightfall, the cabin below deck became our refuge again. We lay side by side, the space between us charged, every breath, every subtle movement a reminder of last night's confession. "I'm scared," he admitted suddenly, breaking the silence. I turned to him, heart lurching. "Of what?" "Of this," he said, voice barely audible. "Of how much I feel for you, and what happens after we leave the water. What if it ruins everything?" I swallowed hard, understanding more than he realized. "Caleb, nothing could ruin this. Not if we're honest with each other." He closed his eyes for a moment, leaning slightly into me. "I want to believe that." I rested my arm around him, letting the weight of the day, the week, and everything we'd been holding in drift into the vast, endless night. Out here, with nothing but sea and sky, we couldn't hide. And maybe, finally, we didn't have to. The open water had a way of stripping away pretense, forcing every hidden feeling to the surface. And for the first time, I felt like I could breathe freely, even with my heart pounding. The night was impossibly quiet. The ocean stretched endlessly, reflecting a sky littered with stars that felt close enough to touch. The boat rocked gently beneath us, a constant, hypnotic rhythm, and we sat side by side on the deck, shoulders brushing. "I never realized the sea could feel so intimate," Caleb murmured, voice low, almost reverent. I turned to him, heart hammering. "It's the quiet, I think. No distractions. No one else. Just us." He nodded slowly, eyes on the horizon. Then, after a long pause, he shifted slightly, turning toward me. The proximity made my stomach twist. "I can't stop thinking about this," he admitted, voice barely above a whisper. "About you." "Me too." I breathed. My chest was tight, my fingers tingling where they hovered near his arm. I wanted to reach out, wanted to close the distance, but for a moment, I just let the tension hang. Then he did something unexpected. His hand brushed mine, deliberately, lingering, a gentle pressure that sent shivers up my spine. Our fingers intertwined naturally, like they were meant to fit. "Do you want this?" he asked, searching my eyes. "I do," I said without hesitation. That was all the invitation he needed. He leaned closer, his lips pressing softly against mine. The kiss was gentle at first, exploratory, testing the waters like the tide beneath us. But it quickly deepened, charged with everything we'd been holding back for years. The boat rocked beneath us, waves slapping gently against the hull, and the wind whipped around us. But none of it mattered. Every touch, every brush of skin, every whispered breath was magnified in the isolation of the open sea. We pulled back just slightly, foreheads resting together, hearts pounding in unison. "I've wanted this forever," Caleb whispered. "Me too," I admitted, voice shaking. "I just didn't know if—" "Shh," he said, silencing me with a soft kiss. "It doesn't matter now." The night stretched on, a haze of whispered confessions, stolen touches, and tentative explorations. We discovered the weight of honesty, the thrill of vulnerability, and the intoxicating closeness that only the open water could force. At one point, I found myself pressed against him on the deck, the stars above us reflecting off the calm water, the boat swaying gently beneath. I could feel his heartbeat against mine, the warmth of his skin, the subtle tension in his muscles. "This is crazy," I whispered. He smiled against my lips. "Yeah, but it feels right." And it did. More than anything ever had. The rest of the trip passed in a mixture of laughter, quiet touches, and moments that demanded honesty. By the time we returned to the marina, we weren't just friends anymore. The sea had stripped away pretense, revealed truths we couldn't ignore, and bound us in a way neither of us expected. Caleb turned to me as we tied the boat to the dock, hands brushing naturally. "So, what happens now?" I took his hand, interlacing fingers with his. We figure it out, together. He smiled, relief and something unspoken in his eyes. Together. The open water had forced us to confront feelings we'd buried, to see each other without walls. And in that clarity, we discovered something neither of us wanted to hide anymore. Because sometimes, being alone with someone you care about, truly alone, makes hiding impossible.